Hi there, Mark Warren here, and I wanted to give you an opportunity to see what's involved with doing very basic XML commands connection. This is kind of your first look at the API. So, from an ingredients point of view, you need a Donor Perfect Online system to have access to. And a couple of things that we're going to want. First is a user. Under Settings, User Security, I have created a user here called SandXML, and I gave him a password. Really, it could have been any user that's here, but when you're doing XML commands, you're better off to have a separate user that you use just for XML commands. So, a user, one ingredient. Next, we are going to want to find somebody to look at. So we've got a donor here, Roger Sandstone, and I notice there's a 16 here. But of course, we find out by the time we get here that 16 is Roger Sandstone's donor ID. Also, for certain commands, when you're first getting used to this, you're going to want a gift ID. So here's a gift ID here. Now I've prepared some XML commands up front just so you can kind of see the process. And what I've done, the very first thing that I'll run here is a select statement. This all the syntax you're going to see here follows standard SQL. Now it looks like these things are on separate lines, but they're not. This is just looks like that because I'm soft wrapping the text, but there are no character returns. This is actually a single line of command here. So just so you know. So I'm going to copy that. I am going to go to a browser window. Now, I don't run this in Safari. I do use Safari on the Mac, but because of the way the XML comes back, it doesn't actually display it in Safari. So I'm using Firefox here. Now, all I did was I pasted that command into the address bar in the browser, and I hit the Enter key, and sure enough, here's what it did. It selected all fields from this table called DP, where, because I didn't want all donors in the system, where the donor ID is equal to 16. And if you recall back here, Roger's donor ID is 16. So what I've got here at the top, it says it doesn't have any style information associated with it because all I'm pulling back is the raw XML. So this is what you get without any sort of dressing up of the result set that comes back. And it shows a record. It shows, for example, a field name called donor ID. This is the ID, and the value of it is 16. A field name, which exists in that same table, DP, called first name. The value for this donor is Roger. A last name field. The value of that field for donor 16 is Sandstone, and so on and so on and so on. Because I use this select star, it pulled back all fields in that table. And if I scroll down, you'd see there's lots and lots in that table. You can use that same syntax. It's actually quite handy. Select star from and give it a table name, just so you can see all of the fields that are in any one of these tables. Okay, next command I'm going to feed in is kind of similar, except this time I just want these fields. I want to see the donor ID, first name, last name. That's it. From same table, DP, again, only where the donor ID is equal to 16. So the actual command is what I've got highlighted here. The very first part of it, all the way up to here, is always the same for any of these commands. What changes is in here. This is my actual statement. Select this, this, and this from what table, where, and any qualifiers. The last part is always going to be the same again. In this case, I'm saying, and the login user is this, and the password is that. So when I take all of that together, copy it, and go back into that address field again and paste it in. This time, I just get back the fields that I asked for: donor ID, first name and last name, and the values of those fields. It follows a pattern. This one here, didn't like that column name. Oh, I'm in the wrong table. DP gift. Let's pull that. Paste it in. And here we go. Donor ID, gift ID, amount, and gift date. Back in here, the last example I use, this time we're going to pull from two different tables, from DP table and DP gift. So I'm selecting these fields: donor ID, first name, last name, amount, and gift date, from two tables this time: DP, comma, and DP gift. Now you'll notice that I've prefixed all of these with the table name, DP, from which table, dot, and which field. From which table, dot, and which field. Now you don't actually have to prefix all of these like this. The only time you really need a prefix is when you've got a field like donor ID that shows up in both tables. But for clarity's sake, I've prefixed them all with the table name. So I'm saying from this table and that table where, and this time I've got a little bit more in a qualifier. I'm saying that in this table, DP, where the donor ID in there is equal to the donor ID in the other table. Makes sense. That's how you hook those two things together. And also, I only want them where the gift ID is equal to 116. So let's take that code and pump that into the system. So that gives you some sample commands. Also, just in passing, you may notice that all of the values that are returned here are all inside these brackets. In the case of the DPO XML API, all returned values are all within this attributes field. So they're all attributes. And that will influence slightly the code that you write to wrap around it and take this raw XML output and pretty it up. But you'll see other examples in the site that will show you how to handle the returned XML values as attributes. So that's pretty much it for your very first look at the basic ingredients that you needed to run some XML commands into your DonorPerfect API system. Just as a very last note, when you are running commands, everything that we ran, we just retrieved data, so we were not changing anything. You can also run commands that will update or change information in your system. Because of that, I strongly recommend that before you run any of those commands on your live system, that you get connected up with the Sandbox system and try things out there, so that while you're getting proficient at using this, you are not in any way risking your actual live donor and gift data. So there we are. There's your first look at the XML API.